Hello everybody. First things first, my name is Chris and I made a free easy lens flare node group pack for the Blender Compositor. They're based off of real cinema lenses, and if you want any of them, they're just in the description. You can go download them for free. And second, I just gave them a huge update for Blender 4.5, and that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video. So yeah, one of you brought it to my attention that I made a pretty big oversight with the lens flares. Thank you, the Black Baku 14. If you try to render at higher resolutions like 4K and 8K, the lens flares just look tiny and baby and don't really scale well at all compared to the rest of the scene. Yeah, and that's a pretty major oversight of mine that I never even tested or considered when I was making them, honestly. I'm almost exclusively on team 1920 by 1080, and once I was wrapping up the lens flares with my ADHD, it took all my willpower to just slump it across the finish line up onto the Gumroad page, which is, I guess, my excuse for why I didn't do as much testing as I probably should have. I also just straight up didn't consider it. But yeah, there are some of you who do huge 5,000 by 3,000 still renders, and there's some of you who do 4K footage and might want lens flares for that, or there's even probably some of you that do PS1 graphics and just want tiny little 240p lens flares. And I want all of you to be able to have lens flares because they're easy and free and they're for everybody. So I started working on a scaling fix a few months ago for Blender 4.4, and I made a version that worked, and it worked pretty well. Just had a few scaling hacks that I figured out. However, to make it work, you need to enter the resolution on the group node, which I know isn't exactly hard, but it's not as easy as not doing it. And this is easy lens flares. I wanna make it easy. So pretty soon after I finished that hack, I found out that in the Blender 4.5 alpha, they had started introducing a few nodes into the compositor that read the render resolution and did exactly what I needed to be able to make this all work. They also got rid of the image size input on the blur node, which is what I was using to make this hack work, but that's in the past. I'm not gonna let it annoy me anymore. So that's why I pushed this update for Blender 4.5, because those new nodes just make this so seamless. So yeah, all that to say, you can render whatever resolution you want. Now, landscape, portrait, doesn't matter. I tested from 240p up to 8K resolution. I think it's 7160 or something. So it should all work. And since I was waiting for Blender 4.5 to drop, I squeezed in a couple other updates, so I'll tell you about those now. Okay, so one of the big things that I heard from people when I released the lens flares is that they want the lens flares to be able to react to the color of the flare object. So if it's a red stoplight, they want the lens flares to also be flashing a little bit red. And in response to that, I made an unlisted video where I kind of break down how exactly you would do that. But it involved cryptomattes, which cryptomattes, once you figure them out, they're not very hard. But also, this is easy lens flares, and I feel the need to hammer this home. They gotta be easy. We gotta stay on brand, okay? So I'm super happy to say that all my research in the lab has paid off, and I found a way for the lens flares to automatically change color based off of the color of the highlight object that you use. So for example, if your animation now involves a super bright street light that goes from green to yellow to red, it just does it automatically. You don't have to do any weird cryptomatte stuff. It just it should just work. Here's the before, here's the after. Okay, next thing. So since it doesn't feel very good to click on a video that's this tool is getting a big update, and then functionally it's exactly the same as before, I made a new lens flare for you guys. Yay, a 5th lens flare. So this new lens flare is based off the Zeiss Super Speed Mark III. The 18mm of that. The lens is used in a ton of different films, including The Terminator, Her, and mid-90s, apparently. And from what I read and watched, the Super Speed is known for its softness and milkiness and just kind of having a low contrast kind of image. Although I just do the lens flares, the handling the color, that's someone else's job. Your job, probably. And yeah, I mostly referenced this one video by ShareGrid. Thank you, ShareGrid. And there will be more to come. I spent a day and I did a ton of research on different cinema lenses and what was used for what, and and I want to make a few of the heavy hitters like the Panavision C and I don't know, there's other ones, a Cook Prime lens. I'm sure that I want to make that. I want to do it all. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned it, but if these helped you out at all, maybe you could help me out by sending me a little tip on the Gumroad checkout page. I don't know, stating some factual information on the internet, but also don't feel obliged. They're free. Take them. So that's kind of it for updates, but I am not quite done. I just want to talk about a couple issues that people have been coming to me with, just so you can get the information here and you don't have to email me individually. I mean, I love hearing from you guys. It's crazy to see a thing I made in people's renders. It's weird. So the first issue that I am seeing is that the lens flares, instead of being circles, they kind of go diamond shape. And this happens when there is too much energy, too much light going through the lens flare node group. And this can happen for two reasons. Number one, the highlight object, instead of being small, it's big. And number two, the highlight object, instead of being kind of far away, it's really, really close, therefore making it big. It's just kind of like simple like math with the area of a circle. A circle that big, even if it gets like a little bit bigger, it could maybe have like double or triple the amount of light pixels going through it. If it gets a little bit bigger, then it'll have like quadruple or 10 times the amount, and that will just cause a lot more energy to go through the lens flare group. So yeah, the first thing I would try is making your highlight object smaller. The other thing you could do is just move it further away, although not that far. Okay. Yeah, somewhere like there, I guess. But a third thing you can do, like if you need your highlight object to be that big, it's like a big sun thing radiating out and you don't want it to flare out into diamond shapes like this. And this is a secret, okay? It just stays between me and you. Okay, we're just gonna grab our lens flare, we're gonna tab into it, and we're gonna go to the very, very, very beginning. There should be this Luma key little frame here, this response sensitivity. We're just gonna take that, we're gonna bring that down. So I'm just gonna quickly preview the end of here, just see what we're doing. So yeah, we still got this flare. It has the big diamond shape because our object is huge. And I'm just gonna bring that down. Okay, we don't have a lot of leeway there. I'd say about there. That's probably as big as you can get the lens flare before it starts behaving badly. Or if you have something that's like small and kind of far away and you don't have as much lens flare action as you want, take this thing, which is normally at 20, and just crank it up. Crank it up. What the heck? Why not? No one's stopping you. It's your lens flare now. Okay, another thing people have emailed me about is they'll have their scene and they'll just have like so many lens flares absolutely everywhere. It'll just be like kaleidoscoping out everywhere, which again is a vibe. I kind of like that, but you know, they want just the one lens flare like normal and they don't know why it's doing that. So most of the time that is because they will have their normal scene, they'll have their highlight object, but they'll also have a huge sun lamp that's super, super, super bright and it'll be reflecting off of a shiny floor or shiny surface. So I'm gonna set up a real quick example just to show you guys. I'm gonna make a water shader really quick. As you can see, we got our one highlight object over here, which we want to see, we want in the scene. But if we back up and we go over this water, oh man, what's going on? If we check out just the flare of that, holy moly, that looks kind of sick, but it's also not what we want. So yeah, if we dive into this, let's go into this lens flare, we will see after our Luma key, we have our main highlight up here, but we also have all these reflections from this sun lamp. And so what are we gonna do about those? So the easiest solution for this would be to turn down the sun lamp. So we can just down that, keep downing that until just the lens flare remains. There we go. But now like the scene is so dark. So let's just take that back. So the other thing you could do is take this material of the water and increase the roughness, but then it doesn't look like water. That's not water anymore. Okay, so let's turn that back down. So the third thing you can do is take your highlight object and just up the strength like a whole bunch, and then go back into the lens flares and also up the threshold a whole bunch. And that I think is like probably the best fix, although as you can see, it's still not like, still isn't perfect. I would still probably turn the sun lamp down a bit. Okay, there we go. That's kind of working. But I still had to turn the sun lamp down a little bit, which like maybe you don't want to do. Let's crank that back up again until we get a few little flaries. Okay, yeah, there we go. So let's go back into this lens flare. So these are all the little bits, all the reflections that get through the Luma key. So what we're gonna do is, instead of fighting them too much, we are just gonna add, actually I'm just realizing that we're not using, I updated one of the lens flares, but not all of them. So let's pretend that we were using the anamorphic lens flare this whole time. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go into the tab, we're gonna tab into the group My brain's dying. And in this Luma key here from the group input, it goes into there. I added this little mutable blur node here. So what that does is, you know, we got our Luma key, which takes the bright object and all the other objects, and we're just gonna blur it. If we take a look at that, now we have our main object and a bunch of little blurred objects. And ideally, if we blur it enough, those objects are just gonna kind of like be nothing, although it looks like we also gotta up the threshold a little bit. So yeah, this is without any blur. And then if I unmute it with M, it'll blur it, and we can blur it a little bit more, and that'll just like dissipate some of that energy and those reflections while keeping the main highlight intact. If we tab back out, now we got just the one lens flare again. So this works if you're like stuck, if you're really in a pickle. However, again, it does affect the lens flare a bit. Like we can go and turn this off again, and you'll see it's a lot tighter. You can see the individual like streaks off the glare as opposed to that. But you know, there's kind of a trade-off with everything, and easy lens flares, it's easy, it's not perfect, but it works in most cases, I think. And Chris from the edit here, a fourth thing that you can do is also just, you know, use the cryptomat. That'll make it so you don't have any new graphical issues that will affect things. Again, not super easy, but it's really not that hard. If you need that solution, it's in the description, the old Unlisted video. Okay, I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about. So yeah, if this is the first video that you're seeing about the Easy Lens Flares node group that I made, and you're confused, you're like, what, how do they work? The highlight object, what the heck? Then you can just go check out the video that I made when I released them, or like, which will be in the description, or I'll put it like right here, I guess maybe. Yeah, that's it. Toodles. As a quick secret sidebar, one of the glaring differences between these renders is that the glare doesn't scale as nicely up to 4K. I spent like a week trying to figure out the solution for this because there's only a range of like 0.18 that you need to adjust between 480p and 8K, and it doesn't exactly scale linearly, but it is linear, but not compared to the resolution. Yeah, I just have a Canadian high school level math education, which makes me pretty stupid, and I kind of broke my brain trying to figure this out. So if anyone watching this wants to properly figure out how to scale the glare to the render size, I'll give them a huge shout out and maybe a kiss on the mouth also, because this has been annoying.